I reported a couple of weeks ago on the pay raise that federal MPs voted for themselves, a raise of $8,500 for MPs and, of course, a much bigger slice, $17,000 for our imperial supreme leader. What I didn't realize at the time is that this raise now makes Canadian MPs the second highest paid in the world, second only to the U.S. But that's only part of the story. While our MPs are second only to American government officials in robbing the people who elected them to live rich themselves, here is Canada's living standards compared to 18 other OECD countries. In 2021, the most recent year for which I could find stats, only 7 countries had a standard of living lower than ours, while the U.S. ranked third, so in actual fact, U.S. government salaries are a much smaller percentage of what the average American makes. The average MP salary in Canada is now $203,000, while the average working Canadian salary is only $63,000, which means MPs are making 222% more than their constituents, while Trudeau is now being paid $406,000 per year to commit treason, or 540% more than the average Canadian earns. This means that while the average Canadian struggles to pay housing, food, and gas costs, MPs make enough in 1 year to buy a small apartment in a major Canadian city. Which brings us to the comparative cost of buying a home. According to the G7 House Price Index, which measures the cost of a home compared to average earnings, Canada was largely behind Germany and France, at least until 2015. Now, what happened in 2015? Well, whatever it was, since then home prices in Canada as a percentage of income have skyrocketed. In fact, home prices in Canada have risen by 70% since 2015, a rate which, as of this 2021 data, far outstrips every other country in the world. The only good news is for renters. Well, no, not really. The house price to rent ratio is a simple metric that compares the price of having a property to the annual cost of renting a similar property in the same area. It is calculated by dividing the median home price by the median annual rent. A ratio under 1.5 means that buying a home may be more affordable than renting. Canada's 2021 ratio of almost 3.0 would indicate that it's far more affordable to rent than buy, but in actual fact, that's not a measure of affordable rents, but astronomical house prices. So this news isn't good for either first-time home buyers or renters. According to Live.Rent's 2022 Canadian Cost of Living Report, which includes food, clothing, transportation, and personal care costs, but not taxes, the average cost of living for a single American was $2,730 per month in Canadian dollars and $5,158 per month for a family of 4. In Canada, in 2022, those costs were $3,828 and $6,722 respectively, or 40% higher for a single person and 30% higher for a family. While I couldn't find reliable recent personal income taxes as a share of GDP for Canada compared to other G7 countries, I did find that as of 2021, Canada was second only to Japan for government corporate income tax revenue as a share of gross domestic product, although since then, we may be outpacing Japan due to Trudeau's ever-so-popular carbon tax. Canada also holds the distinction of having the highest household debt levels of the G7 countries. Back in 2010, we were almost tied with both the US and the UK, but since then, their household debt levels have gone down, at least as a share of GDP, while Canada's have continued to shoot up. For years, up until 2015, Canada was ranked 6th in economic freedom out of all the countries in the world. In the 7 years between Trudeau's election and the most recent stats available from this index, Canada dropped to 10th. According to World Atlas Graphics, as of October of last year, Canada no longer ranked in the top 15 countries in the world for GDP per capita. In fact, we are currently ranked 25th. This might have something to do with the fact that according to the International Monetary Fund World Economic Outlook for last year, Canada now has the world's third fastest shrinking economy, second only to Egypt and Russia. And finally, we can thank our hard-working MPs for steering Canada to have, since 2019, the lowest disposable income of the G7 countries. So, what exactly are our MPs reporting themselves for? Seemingly, spiraling Canada's Boeing-built, fault-riddled financial plane into an economic death spiral while donning their parachutes.